Hello, everybody, especially for those who... Sorry, I think we have to shut this down.
No, leave it in. Leave it in. It's hilarious.
No, exactly. I'm just going to share the joke, especially for those people who aren't. Who aren't here tonight.
Oh, it's hot.
We eventually have to talk, you know.
Yes.
Okay, Paula. So, it feels rather weird without people. But I mean, you're here. But...
I'm not offended, honestly.
I don't know why it's hilarious. I'm feeling hot.
Oh God, it really is hot. I wish I had a fan.
Okay, I'm going to start all over again. So, hello everybody and welcome to this conversation.
Oh, this is great. You know what? Contagious laughter. Laughter releases so many chemicals. I can't remember what they are, but there we go.
Yes, good endorphins, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, look, I'm just going to try and keep a straight face, even though I'm a lesbian. That's really a stale joke. Okay, so I'm going to try again. Apologies for all this laughter. I'm trying to introduce Paula and this conversation. I'm really, as usual, I'm not good with introductions. I think it's become stale now, me saying the same thing all the time. I met Paula in another group, and I think we just started to like each other's comments, make jokes, and just started to generally tease one another. At least that's how I remember it. And then one time I saw Paula had put a post about her tumor, that it started to shrink. And that caught my eye. And I thought, ooh, I want to speak to her. But I think before that, before I saw that post, I had already started to speak to you through Messenger. I sent you a private message, and I connected with you, and I felt there was a connection, so I just went for it, like I always do. And then we were supposed to catch up and have a conversation, and for some reason I never got into your scheduler and the link to your scheduler, and then something else happened, and it just happened. And the conversation with you was that I was curious, and I said to you, your tumor. I just said your tumor, and you said to me, my tumor, my friend, the best thing that ever happened to me. And we had a little conversation around that, and it was nice. It was warm, as you were saying just earlier, with a lot of resonant, beautiful conversations you've been having. And basically what I would like to talk about today is, oh yes, I forgot something really, to me, really special. You're my first guest with the new name, BUTV, You Can't TP the Human Out of You. So before we go into the nitty-gritty of your story and your own journey with let's say, with the tumor or your own journey, because that's what does, I'm going to ask a question that's really digresses, but what does being you mean to you, Paula?
I think it means, it's an interesting question actually, and for me it means to just be free to be me, unfettered by worrying about other people's reactions to me. And when I think back, I think it's probably the same for all of us, to some extent or other. I've always been limited, unhealthily limited by, not by other people's reactions really, but by what I made those reactions mean. So the stories that I made up, without even realizing what I was doing. And I can see that pattern all the way through my life. And so if we were to put numbers on it, I would maybe say I've been limited maybe 90%, as much as 90%, by those meanings that I put on, other people's reactions. And it's not even other people's reactions really, it's just what I projected onto them. And now I'm probably limited, I don't know, 10 or 15%. For me, it's really, and it covers everything. It covers schooling, it covers parents, relationships with parents, health. There is, for me, there is nothing, there's no subject that be you doesn't apply to. In fact, actually, I had a conversation, funnily enough, I had a conversation with somebody else, and we talked about it, and he said, this is another thing I wrote down, Diane, I've started scribing all of a sudden. My experience confirms the importance of going your own way any time that the alternative is to minimize the fullness of what you found in order to fit another person's vision. And I just thought, expresses it so beautifully. That's really what be you for me is. And it's not an aggressive, be unapologetic. And it's not that British, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it my way. It's just, I'm sorry, but it's just, oh yeah, this is me.
Yeah, I think I resonate with that. My projections over people, what someone might say, and how I interpret it or give it a meaning according to whatever occurs to me in that moment. I mean, one case in point is that recording, that conversation I had with Grayson. When I left and I had that insight, and that insight for me was the precursor to BUTV, and giving myself the permission to say whatever comes up in any single conversation I have in my group, but not only limited to that, also in my coaching conversations, in my daily conversations, in my daily interactions. And it has, just like it did, leak into all walks of life. So, and that's exactly what it means to me, the freedom of being me and just taking off my masks, many and the layers of thought that we have about how we should be rather than how we really are, just to accommodate. I really like that. I'm glad this is recorded so people can just make a note if they want to. So you talked about health. So I want to pick on that one because this is what the conversation is about. The tumor and how it was the best thing that ever happened to you. And that's what I'd like to dive into today with you, Paula.
Yeah, I think just to give a bit of context.
Yes, please.
I can almost say that. I mean, I didn't walk around as miserable as sin, but you know, for most of my life, there's been quite a large part of me that's been unhappy or discontented, and it kind of all came to a head. So just very quickly, if we go back to around 2009, I was having some, you know, I had some gynae issues, and at the time, I had a bit of a bust up with a registrar in a hospital who well, basically wanted to do a D&C, and I'd been told by the consultant that it would just be, you know, polyp removal, one polyp removal. So I had a bit of a bust up with the registrar. And
what's bust up?
Bust up, a bit of an argy-bargy, a bit of an argument, shall we say. And can I just say it was, this is as far as my soapbox is going, but can I just say I was in a very vulnerable position, wearing paper knickers on a trolley. And this woman's telling me not to be silly. And I'm thinking, whose body is this? You know. So anyway, it didn't end there, but I parted ways kind of thing. And I said, I'll manage it myself. So that was 2009. Anyway, my mum, who was elderly, she, you know, lived on her own, but not a frail woman at all. She was about 78 by the time she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a cancer, blood and bone based cancer. So she was diagnosed with that, and I was a main carer at the time. I've got two brothers, but of course I'm the daughter. I'm the one that can do it all, single-handed. My dad had passed away years before, so, and of course I've got a background in alternative health as well. So it's like, I can do this. So we start on the journey, but I'm a very emotional person as well. So I was finding it really tough. I was at the same time, I was dealing with a really stressful job, or a job that for me was very stressful, working bonkers shifts, trying to keep the car on the track at home with my partner. We weren't very flush financially. I was finishing work every day, crossing the city to my mum's, sorting all out our nutrition out, everything. It was, I don't know how I did it really. And I'd got so kind of hyper vigilant that I couldn't even sleep in the same room as my partner because I couldn't bear to hear any noise at all. No, nothing. If I could hear the fridge or a radio, you know, the hum of electrical appliances, I had to turn them all off, and I was sleeping on the sofa. So it wasn't in a good place at all. And the diagnosed my mum as terminal. I should never have listened to that, but I did. But she went through chemo, and she didn't do bad for a while. The toll on me was getting, you know, it was really taking a huge toll out of me, and I started to struggle at work, and my boss took me off the phones because I worked in telephone banking, and she took me off the phones because she said I was a liability. Anyway, I started to get really, really tired, chronic pains, and my GP was telling me I was depressed. Now, I've been through depression, and I know the difference between depression and pain all over. So in 2013, he did some tests, and about 5 months later, in May, to my shock, they told me that I had uterine cancer, and I needed to have a total hysterectomy. Well, I was on my knees at this time. You know, I would have just done anything really, and I knew that I'd have some time off following the surgery, and my idea was I'll have 6 to 8 weeks off. I'll just be able to pull back, get myself on my feet again, go back to work, and everything will be hunky-dory again. Well, it wasn't. It all went very south. It took me a long time to recover. I did get back to work, but it was 5 months after. Mum was declining back, so that was it. I had the surgery in 2014, June 2014. Mum was declining. Went back to work, then ended up off work again because I just couldn't function. And I was so frustrated with myself. And then my mum passed away in June 2015. Fast forward to April 2017. And I mean, I was still struggling a lot. I'd been diagnosed with chronic fatigue by this time. I was still struggling a lot. And I just couldn't see how I was going to get better because I wasn't getting any help really from conventional medicine. And so 2007, so in April I had these quite really bad pains actually in my chest. And as it so happened, I've been talking to Anne Curtis, who's a 3P person. We'd just had a conversation that day. And I just mentioned, these pains. And she said, oh, go lie down, there's a strategy that I can teach you, and go lie down, see how you feel a bit later on. Do you mind if I speak to you later on? So I just said, yeah, I'll message you and see you. Anyway, she said, I'll message you later on, and I'm completely calm about it, but I still had the pains. So she said, if I was your GP, I'd want you to get checked out. So I'm like, oh, okay then. I have no wish to be anywhere near any medics whatsoever. But anyway, I did get checked out, and they did some scans and everything, and they said, we think it might be blood clots. So we just need you to come back and have a scan the next day. So, okay, I'll come back and have a scan the next day. And I'm thinking, blood clots? Don't much like the sound of that. So I went back the next day, had the scan, and I was waiting all day for the results. And I'm sat there with Simon, huffing and puffing, because I'm seeing all these people go in and out with their results, and I never clicked. And when I look back, I think, God, you must be stupid, Paula. And then right at the end of the day, the nurse came and said, Paula Vickers. But instead of taking me into a cubicle, they took us off the ward. And I knew straight away then there was something. They took us off the ward because they put us in the family room. You don't go in the family room. There's nice seats in there. They never put you in nice seats unless there's bad news. And they told me then that they'd found a mass, and it's between my lungs and above my heart. And you could have knocked me down with a feather. And I said, oh, it's not big though, is it? And he said, no, I didn't say it's not big. I said, it doesn't seem to be touching any other organs. So that was how I found that I had this thing, and the fear. I'm sure anybody can relate that's sort of been hit with something that kind of hints at the mortality, because I'd already had cancer once, and it wasn't that long ago, really. It was only 3 years ago. And the fear was just horrendous. I saw my family upset. This is all in my head. You know, I saw my family upset. I saw me dwindling and just all this sadness around me, and leaving Simon and not having enough insurance, all this type of stuff. And so that was where it started, really. But for some reason, so I went through, they put me on a fast track because they were pretty convinced that, I mean, they won't admit it, but they put me on a 10-day fast track, and they don't do that for people that they think of it's all going to be okay. So they put me on this, and I resisted every step of the way because, I felt like I was on this, well, it was like, for me, it was fast track to chemotherapy, surgery, pain, suffering, hair falling out, feeling sick, tired. That to me was a fast track I was on. So they did body scan and more. They did more stuff, and they did a biopsy, and the biopsy was supposed to be 2 biopsies. So you're not sedated. They just you lie down and they start putting big needles in your, through round here, and I didn't like it. And they were supposed to do 2, and at that appointment, I got a learner, Diane. I got a learner. And
you mean someone who's learning how to do a biopsy?
Well, she was a doctor, obviously, but she's obviously fairly new to doing this. This must have been her next step. Okay. So she had she was concentrating so hard on what she was doing that there was no interaction with me, and I just felt pinned down. And that's not a good place for me to be ever. And she'd also, on the consent form, written down that I was having a lung biopsy. And I said, it's not a lung biopsy, it's a mediastinal. And she said to me, oh, most people don't understand what mediastinal means, so I just put lung. Well, that didn't sit well at all. So it was supposed to be 2, but she didn't get enough stuff, so it ended up being 4 biopsies. And after that, I'd had enough. So we came away, and they decided they couldn't find any lung cancer. They couldn't find lung cancer. They couldn't find any uterine, if it had metastasized. They couldn't find that, and there was something else they couldn't find. But they didn't have enough to do the rest of the tests. So they wanted me to have a surgical biopsy where they'd knock me out and start digging about, take a bigger chunk. Well, that didn't sit well for me, Diane, because once you start digging about, I think it just makes sense to me that it's easier to spread things. So I said, well, thank you very much, but I'm not looking at that yet. And I was scheduled to go away about a month later. And I said, I'll have it after my holiday, or I'll look at having it after my holiday. I said, I want to try some other stuff first. And I came home from that appointment, and I thought, I just can't do that. I cannot go down that road. And the question popped into my head, do you want to live? And my answer at that time was, I do not want to live like this. If this is it, I can't honestly say yes. Straight on the back of that was, and I did not think it, Diana, it didn't come from me, was, well, if you did want to live, what would that version of yourself look like? Who would be doing the living? And I just had this picture of myself, vibrant, and smile. Funnily enough, getting into my car, that was a picture that I had, and it was vibrant, it was smiling, and alive. And I connected with that somehow. And from that minute onwards, I knew I was going my own way. And fortunately, so I already had some stuff, you know, I already had a background in alternative health. I just got on researching, just like a normal person though. It's like I've not got 100 degrees in all this stuff. I'll tell you where I started. I started with The Truth About Cancer, which is a series that Ty Bollinger or whatever his name is, he's done. And I watched those videos and I pulled out the threads that spoke to me. And I made Simon watch them as well. And Simon's not into alternative health as well, but he knew that this was like do or die. And so I pulled out the threads and just got on with it. And fortunately, it started to shrink. But why I call it my friend is...
Why do you call it the best thing that ever happened to you?
Yeah, definitely. Because I was living a miserable life. I was living a half life. I was living a life, we talked about it earlier on, you know, I was living a life that was dictated by all the fears that I had around relationships, around money, around work. And it was like I'd retreated and I'd shrunk. And it took, for me, I'm not saying it's the same for everybody, and I would never say everybody should go my way, but for me, it took something like that tumor, nothing else that I can think of would have done it, to kind of shock me into stepping into me, into stepping into who I really am. And so it was the best thing that happened to me. It's still there. It's stable and possibly shrinking a bit more. I did actually think about getting a picture up because when I go and have the scans done, I ask them if I can take pictures. So Simon take pictures of the screen because that's really useful to me to be able to see it, you know, especially on days when I'm thinking, I don't want to do my juicing, or I'll just stuff my face with chocolate or whatever. So it's still there, and it's just still, I don't see it as something to be fearful of. I see it as something that indicates a process. And it's a process. It's just, what design am I living into? Am I living into, you know, thriving, or am I hiding a bit? And nothing else could have done that. Nothing that I can think of anyway. Oh, it is terrifying at the start. Because I was in such shocking shape anyway, with the fatigue, the chronic fatigue, I felt hopeless. If you would have said to me, are you behaving like a victim at the time, I would have said, absolutely not. I'm not a victim. Actually, when I think about it, there was that energy. And I don't mean a poor me energy. I just mean overwhelmed by, just overwhelmed by thinking that I had to be hid. I had to stay hidden. I couldn't be me. It's too dangerous, too unsafe. But it's difficult to put the words to. But definitely an energy of, I can't be me. I didn't even know me was.
So this, I didn't intend, I mean, for this conversation to somehow lead to my own insight and this BUTV and stepping into our own light and stepping into who we really are. And for some reason, that's where it's led to. Now, you seem, I had the picture of you when you were stepping into your car. It was like a car, the sun was on the car, and you suddenly, you didn't even talk about the sun, I think. And suddenly you stepped into this light of the sun and into the car, and you kind of said to yourself, this is the feeling I've got, right, it's now or never. And when you asked yourself, do I want to live? In my heart, I was saying, hell yes. So there are two aspects of your journey. And I'd like to make a disclaimer here. I think it's important, especially since I'm going to put this on YouTube, that this is not, that it is recommended that people still seek medical advice. What you do and what other people do are completely different. We are not dishing out medical advice. I'm saying this just to safeguard us and to keep it within safe parameters. So, as I was saying, it seems like that we can't, I mean, do I want to analyze? No, not really. I just want to point to two things. One, who is who I really am to Paula in this dimension, in the physical dimension, which according to a scientist, and I watched a video yesterday, 20 minutes long, who is testing, really, really testing whether this, just grabbing this, okay, whether this really exists or not. I think his name is Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman is an actor. I can't remember his name, so don't quote me. I can put the link in the group. Stepping into who Paula is in this physical dimension, as well as stepping in who you are, because I think there's a link there, because the strength that you found is somehow the realization and the recognition that you're not who you think you are. Or did I misunderstand that?
Interesting question. Yeah, I think my take on that is that there are really limitless possibilities, both practically and thinking about it philosophically. I mean, every decision that we take is, I suppose you could argue it's a kind of a different, potentially a different version of yourself that takes different decisions. So I wouldn't have thought about it at the time. I definitely see it as my choice who to be. But no, I know what I mean. It's like allowing more of who I really am to be expressed through this, you know, for want of a better way of putting it, physical activity of being this form.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose I see maybe where I was at that time was I was this physical side of me was very limiting in terms of allowing the fullness of that expression of me. And I think I would say that limiting was my unhappiness.
So you became unhappy, or you were unhappy because you were limiting yourself?
Yeah, I think I was unhappy because I wasn't being the fullest expression of me. And I think that caused, essentially, that's what caused my, you know, whether you call it the tumor, chronic fatigue, the gynae problems. I think it's all been down to limitation. That's my perspective of my journey, not anybody else's, but that's my perception for me.
Well, I have spoken, have you heard of Tanya El-Farsi?
No.
I can't pronounce her surname. She's I had her as a guest, and she had one insight around menopause, and she realized it's pretty similar. Her story is pretty similar. She realized that all the stories she had made up about herself and who she should be and what she should have, and the stress around wanting to, well, I'm paraphrasing. This is what I understood. Trying to fit into the mold of how she expected herself to be, and how we've now grown into a society, or rather being conditioned by a society that says that success is what we have to have: a published book, 2 kids.
Yeah.
When she realized that that's what she was striving for, because she was a successful woman, and that does not mean she's not successful now, but she worked abroad. She had written a book which she found very difficult publishing. And when she realized that she was creating all this in her mind, and she was living around this expectation of herself, when she dropped it, all her menopausal symptoms vanished. They vanished. So they are limiting thoughts. And the possibilities are limitless. They are limitless, especially if yesterday in a private conversation, someone suggested to me that when we're asleep is when we're in reality, when our dream state. And when we're awake, we're in our dream. This is a dream. It's not real. And if that's the case, then anything is possible. But because we have so many layers of thinking and there's so much conditioning, and because we are programmed, basically, I think, through time, to be afraid and to always be on the watch out, and we drift from personal to universal, it seems unlikely that this is a dream. I have a lot of resistance around that, but I'm open to it. And as for and I think I tend to resonate, and I believe there's a lot of hope in me, because I too have lots of chronic pain. I've had it for a long time. I have a lot of chronic stomach issues that I'm sleeping now, but it's spreading to my arms. And so I really do believe that the limiting thoughts, our innocent believing our limiting thoughts, that have a huge bearing on our health, on our well-being, and ultimately disease.
Definitely.
But this is how I see it. And again, I really want to to ensure that...
You've muted.
Yes, I know.
Oh. Here we go.
We're just two gigglers. So, okay, so we've touched upon the physical as well as the spiritual, but I'd like to know a bit more about your journey, because you talked about the truth about cancer, you took out the threads that were important to you, you are into alternative health, and you talked about juicing. What measures did you take on the physical plane, obviously? What food are you eating, and what are you doing basically to help yourself? Nikki mentioned cannabis oil too.
Yeah, that was one of the things. That was one of the things. But to be honest, from my perspective and my intuitive sense is that everything changed really with the mind shift. Everything came from that, from that shift. And so I don't know how I did it. I stopped all sugar, apart from naturally occurring sugars. I stopped all processed food. I started juicing. And I still juice every day. I have almost every day. I have at least 4 glasses of vegetable juice, and I put in that vegetable juice kale, celery, cucumber, carrot, beetroot, yellow peppers, ginger and lemon. What I did, Diane, actually, was I overdosed. My sense was I need to overdose on nutrition. That's what I need to do, because I had severely abused my poor innards. And I don't mean with, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink lots of alcohol, but I was a sugar fiend. And when I was working, just to get through a shift, I would have at least 1 or 2 chocolate bars, a can of Coke, and quite often I had, and you might not know what these are, I'm embarrassed to even say it, I had 3 Beecham's powders. I could have 3 Beecham's powders a day, and Beecham's powders they're like an over-the-counter, like painkiller type thing, and they've got aspirin in, they've got caffeine in, and I can't remember what else, but I would take those regularly. So So my poor little innards must have been like strangled virtually.
My
Surprised my
what?
internals didn't bleed to death.
My what? Where?
Innards, like my insides.
Okay.
So, but I stopped all that, and I did it. I did it virtually overnight, which is why I think it started to shrink like it did. So everything that I put into my mouth was just pure nutrition. You know, I had salads. I had virtually all salads. I had a lot of raw stuff, but not everything raw. It was really, don't have any processed stuff. I gave up meat. And I've gone a little bit back onto meat now, but mostly organic. But the reason that there's quite a body of evidence to say that giving up meat is beneficial if you're dealing with cancer. However, I think some of that is probably because the meat's got so much stuff in it, you know, so many chemicals, hormones, and all the rest of it. So that was the food strategy. I also started to do my own version of yoga. And again, you know, I didn't go anywhere else. I just kind of thought to myself, I knew how tense my body was and always has been. And I just had this really strong intuition that I had to kind of stretch everything out because, you know, if you just think about something, you know, if you're constricted, nothing can move. So I was okay, let's see if I can unconstrict. So I found a video on YouTube, and I did that video religiously every day. I'd also been a long time follower of Joe Dispenza. I don't know whether you know about it, but I love that man and his work. It's all around meditation, but there's, you know, he does a lot of brain scans and testing other biological tests in his workshops and one thing and another. So I meditated every day as well. Definitely saw results from that. What else did I do? Meditation, yoga, nutrition, juicing. I do the cannabis oil, but I couldn't get hold of the cannabis oil that has THC in, which is, I mean, a lot of people say you need that if you've got cancer. But the cannabinoids, whatever they're called, you know, the oil that I take has got a lot of those in, so which is anti-inflammatory. I took another, because it seems to me that inflammation is it's a huge factor in most chronic conditions, it seems to me, certainly in cancer. So I also take a supplement which has got frankincense, myrrh and turmeric in. That's all it's got in, you know, it's pretty natural, and use the same oil, and I use the oil topically. And I think that's about all I've done. Oh, I have wheatgrass. I drink loads and loads of water, but I don't have things like, you know, I don't have juices. I don't have, you know, squash. I don't have dressings other than dressings that I make myself. I know what I'm eating. I fall off the wagon sometimes, but I'm on the wagon more than I'm off it. But all that came from, you know, who's the person that's doing the living.
Well, going back to the same thing from
past. Yeah. So for me, it's what I did. For other people, you know, it's what's right for them. And let's face it, I could die tomorrow. I could be wrong. But I would rather live my life out loud my way and snuff it tomorrow than feel constrained and constricted to go down a path that frightens me to death. My consultant's been quite good, because some people, they write off. If they won't go their route, they write them off and they won't scan. They don't have a duty of care. But mine has actually continued to scan. I've forgotten why I'm saying this now.
You
Oh,
were
I know why.
yeah.
So when I go have the scan, and it's okay. I'm quite happy to have the scan. It doesn't bother me at all. But when I go back to the appointment, there are two things actually. I noticed early on that when I went to the hospital, I'd get frightened. And, or, you know, in the days leading up, I'd just start getting a little bit twitchy. And then it occurred to me, well, what is there to get twitchy about? Because however it is however it is. Yeah, I'm still alive and kicking. I feel fine. Whatever they say doesn't change that. So that kind of shifted me to being less perturbed. But I also realised that when I went to the clinic, because there are some really sick people that are in those clinics, and they look grey and they look gaunt and they look like they've got cancer. And I'd be all okay, you know, just going in and sat with Simon and going through the motions and letting him weigh me and all the rest of it. But I noticed that the longer I sat there, the more agitated I'd get. And I realised that there was no conscious thinking, but it was just my internal models were, you know, sort of taking in this environment and measuring it against what they thought, and I'm getting agitated. And it's, you know, it's amazing, really, you know, what we do without even, you know, I always think, you know, words are a poor man's communication, generally speaking. It's I don't trust my words that come into my head. I rarely trust anybody else's. But feelings, you know, if I sit with feelings, and I know that, you know, some people don't listen to your feelings. My feelings are my best friend. They are my indicator of the models that are shaping what I'm feeling. And if I sit with those, I am 9 times out of 10 all good. Because you can tell that you sit with your feelings and don't analyse them. Just sit with the feelings. They give so much information. And that's what I find.
So if I summarize what I've heard, and then if it's okay with you, I'd like to open up this up to, I think we have an Emma with us tonight. Another Emma. Maybe she wants to join into the conversation. I think the most important part of this journey for you was your spiritual and mental shift, and recognizing your perceptions and how those perceptions are giving form to your thinking, or for lack of which then express themselves as feelings, because and through that, I'm not sure if I'm expressing myself properly, but I think what strikes me the most in this whole conversation is not the nutrition is an important part of you taking ownership of stepping into your light. If you want to step into your light, then you have to be responsible for the body that's protecting that's the temple of your soul. And when you were eating the Snickers or whatever, the chocolate bars or whatever it is you were doing, you were abusing, you weren't stepping into your light. I really like to remind us that we innocently did it. But it seems to me even the nutrition, the yoga, the meditation was kind of a gesture of or a respectful, it was in communion with your decision,
That's
with
a
your
really good
realization.
way. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually.
So sorry, on the I'd like to open I wonder if you have any questions. I think you're Emma, right?
Sorry, Diane. Yeah, it's Emma.
It's all right. I'm wondering if anything struck you, if you have any questions, if you have
Well, I linked in sort of a bit late, really. So, but I've picked up sort of the majority of it from what I can gather. With Paula, let me put my video on. Hold on. I do look a bit rough because I've been decorating and cleaning.
Doesn't matter. We'll take you as you are.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. Yeah. So what I'm gathering is this right? I don't know. Paula obviously had or is poorly and had an experience where she's getting with her true self, and which she's doing that, the fear has dropped away, etc., etc. Is that correct, Paula, or do you want to just run past a bit more?
I suppose that's I suppose that's one way of putting it. Apart from I still have the tumor. I've still got some vestiges of I'm still doing a little bit of chronic fatigue. However, I just don't see myself as poorly anymore.
No. So since you've looked at it as a completely different way,
yeah,
things are sort of, well, you're just feeling better about life, and things.
It shifted. Yeah, it shifted, and as I stepped into that different expression, Paula just not part of the picture.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a nap this afternoon, but
yeah. But you have moments, obviously, like we all do, and I find that really. I mean, I had an experience with my husband who had a health scare. He come across the principles in January, like on board, as we say. Before that, it was very much, on and off. Like he got the whole thought thing and everything like that. But then, obviously, when he had things come up for him, it was then. Do you know what I mean? That was real. Something else.
Yeah.
So if I say he came on board in January totally, do you know what I mean? He totally had an insight, massive insight, sort of understood it for the bigger picture. And at that time, he had like quite a serious health scare. We were going through quite a big thing with his heart, and a lot of things were going on. So that experience was really interesting for me because he dipped into thought quite heavily, but he knew what it was behind it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't I would probably say if that happened 3 years ago, he would have been in it full time, like the whole fear thing, death, really heavy. Do you know what I mean? And it would have consumed him. But I saw a very different experience with it all going on, which, so for me, that was really interesting to see how many, once he saw it, the poorly person went. Do you know what I mean? Like exactly like you. And it was fascinating. And I'm not saying that he didn't dip into it sometimes, because we're only human. That's normal, isn't it? But it was quite interesting for me to see that shift in him. So when he got upset, he was just having a moment, and he'd just say, "I'm just having a moment," and that's fine. That's fine. It's all or nothing in our opinion, and there was no judgment, no like added attachment on top of that. It was really interesting. So I love hearing stories. I love hearing that people share. I mean, I just love what Diane does, because it's always so real and raw. I love it. Do you know what I mean? These conversations. So thank you, Diane. You honestly, you're doing such a great thing here. But yeah, I just love hearing, especially these type of things, Paula, because it's like powerful stuff, isn't it? And massive, in people's lives. to see it for what it is, and then all that just start dropping away is like awesome, really. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing.
I think it's one of those things where, I mean, the last scan that I had, it was only a couple of months ago, I got told off by my niece because I think she'd FaceTimed me or something on the way to the hospital for the results. And funnily enough, they didn't have a report. They didn't have a radiologist report. So I'd had the scan a month before, and we went down to get the results, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She's really lovely, is this consultant, but she says, "I'm so sorry. It's not back yet." And I said, "Oh, it's not back after." I thought she didn't have the scan. I thought she didn't have anything. I said, "No, it's not back after. I had it. I definitely had it. It must be, it must be somewhere." And she said, "No." She says, "There's no radiologist report," but she had the scan. That's all I'm bothered about. I just want to see pictures. I aren't really. It's not that I'm not interested in what they say, but I'm not daft. So we all crowded round, me and my partner, and this consultant crowds round and does our little bit of looking and says, "Yeah, it's definitely no bigger. Yeah, it looks like it's possibly shrunk a bit because it's changing shape." You know what I mean? But I telling them that is, it threw me a little bit. So I forgot to ring Jasmine back and say, "Oh, it's okay. It's at worst it's stable and at best it's shrinking," because it's just kind of become. You're right. It's a big thing, but it's kind of old news to me now. It's like I have this expectation. It's kind of old news to me now. And I actually put it on Facebook. I put something on Facebook about, and I was astonished. I put it on Facebook because I want people to know that whatever route somebody takes, the prospect of cancer or anything else doesn't have to be a death sentence. Just that bit of space to say, "Okay, this is looking tricky, but I've got time." When I think about, yes, I have this thing here. However, my eyes still see. I can still move about. I can still walk. My heart still beat. All this stuff that's working really quite fabulously well, given how I've used it in the past. It's just, it doesn't have to be. It can just be something else that just another part of a journey that we go through. It doesn't have to have all this horror around it. And that's one of the things actually that I'm kind of regretful about. I don't have many regrets, but when we go and we sit in that clinic, and these people, they look like they've got the horror and the weight of the world on their shoulders, and I totally get why. I really totally get why. And if there was just the one thing that I would have them know, it would be, doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to feel as bad as you do.
A couple of things are occurring to me. I almost don't want to break the silence, but I'm apart from being a coach, I always say this, I'm a taxi driver, and I had a client, and part of the service that we give to clients is we take them to their hospital appointments, which could be radiotherapy, chemotherapy, but most of the clients that I take are to radiotherapy. And this guy, it hit me when he said it. He said we're always afraid of getting cancer, because I think it's safe to say that people are afraid of getting cancer. I think it's the #1 killer in the world, but that's just me thinking that. I don't know. I don't know statistics. He said, but then when you get it, what's the big deal? I've got it. And the way he said it, his realization was, huh? So it's kind of, we're more afraid to get something, and when it actually hits us, we resign to the fact that we have it, or we go two ways, one of two ways. We either have the shift that you have, or it becomes doom and gloom, anger, resentment, completely asking ourselves, why me, I'm too young, I'm going to die, or whatever. Or we say it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, I don't want it to sound glib, you know. I think some people get a little bit angry, you know, or think that it's glib, or, well, it's all right for you because, you know, I still don't know if my tumour is cancer. Yeah, and in fact, you know, somebody has said to me, oh, well, it's okay for you because yours might not be. And in that, it's, when I hear that, I think, oh, they've kind of, it sounds to me like they think I've minimised their pain or their suffering. And that's not it at all. You know, because as I said, those first few days were like, oh, horrendous, especially after the uterine cancer. And the only other person that I've come across who's got this particular thing that followed uterine cancer is not in a good way. I'm honestly not trying to minimize anything, and I am very respectful of what other people are going through and what they're feeling. And I also know that it just doesn't have to be the journey that we've been innocently conditioned into thinking the journey is going to take a particular shape and form, and it just doesn't have to. There are so many people who are resolving cancer and many other things, you know, not just cancer, not just tumours, but they're resolving them. It doesn't have to be an horrendous death sentence.
I'm just realizing that maybe I came across in a way that does minimize other. That's not my intention.
Oh, I didn't think that.
Now that's that voice in my head that's going blah 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 blah. But I just want to also join you in being clear that, I mean, I think I was referring to myself, because sometimes the pains in my stomach are so annoying, I get down about it. But when I stop resisting it, I find peace. It's incredible. I just find peace. There's another thing that I want to touch upon, which to talk about, which you touched upon, and my own journey with my own pains and my stomach ailments, which I've had since I was 16 and I'm 51. And that woman I was talking about, that's Move Your DNA of Katie Bowman, and the emphasis she puts on not on exercise, because you touched upon it with yoga, not on exercise, but in moving, and literally moving your DNA with not being static throughout the day, and how movement, when you set the oxygen going, when the blood vessels start going and oxygen is released, those particular muscles are also getting rid of all the accumulated garbage. But not every move, but not all muscles will be touched, obviously. It depends on the movement. And how we can respect our body by just becoming aware of our posture. I have watched you as well move around, and I've been consciously shifting from one what do you call it?
Cheek.
From one cheek to another, and really trying not to sit on my tailbone, and to stand up, to sit up straight, and how it makes a difference to our well-being. And how when we're not moving or eating the right nutrients, we're literally starving our muscles and from the right energy. But this woman is mind-blowing. That you must listen to that podcast, Paula.
Yeah, I definitely will. I think I said that, I've known that I've had tension. In fact, years ago, I did I had some teaching from an osteopath, and part of it was we were seeing whether our spines were aligned. The class were like seeing how aligned our spines were. And what he said was my spine was really aligned. However, that the paraspinal muscles and muscles in my back were so tense. He actually said they're like concrete. And he said the only time that you would see that really is either if there's been a trauma and you've been in hospital on your back for a sustained period of time, or over a very long period of emotional holding, tense. And I've always remembered that, because I used to get tension migraines. There's nothing to do with constriction of veins and arteries in my, but I would get really bad tension migraines, and I've known that I've had this holding. And as I've gone through this journey over the last 18 months or so, and I've paid more attention to my body, both in meditation and through my yoga and my movement, it's like I can feel things. I feel bits of awareness. I become aware of bits of my body that just seem to be letting go. I'm aware of them for the first time in my lifetime. And it's fascinating to think that somehow or other, these bits that have been so constricted have still managed to function to some extent for so long. How much easier. It's like this cave rescue, in Thailand.
Yeah.
And they've gone through these tiny, tiny places. And we have those same tiny, tiny places. And just you can't make the rock kind of just let go, but we can. It can just encourage the muscles and the vessels and the sheaths that surround the organs to just let go. And it makes sense that the chemicals are going to work better. They're going to go where they're supposed to go, and it's all going to line up, and we're all going to be happy.
I just had this image, and I think if you're okay with that, we can wrap it up. But I had this image when you were talking about the constriction, and you talked about the rescues and going through the caves, and then suddenly I thought that when you had the shift and you asked yourself, do I want to live? And you said, not like this. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it's like the image I got was of expansiveness. So your whole soul expanded. And if our whole soul expands, it won't fit into our body, it just won't fit. I have no idea where that came from. I just had that image. So if we literally start to move, oh, I was going, and everything, did you just giving more space for source to, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, go with it. It sounds great. It's cool. It's like years ago, I used to really be into auras and stuff like that, like massively, and exactly what Paula's talking about, meditation, yoga. I used to do loads of meditation and yoga, and I really loved the way, Paula, I loved the way you said, like, being in touch totally with your body. So mind, body and spirit. It's like, and that's all the principles as well. It's like total connection. Do you know what I mean? And the more expansive you are and not limited, limited beliefs and behaviors and conditions, the more open you are, the more freer everything becomes. And I mean, I do think physical, I do think physical, the best I've felt in my life is obviously now, and but I don't do much meditation and yoga because for me personally, that was like the time I was doing it, I was like escaping. I was thinking it was a yoga and meditation creating that feeling, do you know what I mean, of space. But I know that is us. Do you know what I mean? That is what we are. So so I don't do it as much, but when I do, wow, it's like mind-blowing. Like having the understanding of 3 principles, like what you're doing, having the understanding and doing that. It's like, well, it's massive, powerful stuff. The shifts, you can feel the shifts within you.
Oh, like, yes, definitely.
Isn't
it? Very physical.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes we can get into this sort of a bit of a denial of physical. It's like, well, I don't understand why I would even do that, because it's part of it. It's just part of the whole experience, and it's reflected. It's reflective of the mental stuff, the emotional stuff, it's that space that that Diane just spoke about. That I can see it myself on my version of it. It's like, there are what do they say, that I don't know, 99.9% of what we are is space anyway. It's just information. It's just space. And when we can sort of just breathe into that, it allows more information through.
For me, it was like, if I pay attention and I literally go out, go for a walk, get into touch with nature, but getting in touch with myself, and I allow, and I become more flexible, all of a sudden I had this image of my soul, our souls, even, and Emma's too, that we wouldn't fit. It wouldn't fit. It wouldn't fit into this form. There's no way it would fit. I had this feeling of like huge. So when we're limiting ourselves, like what Emma pointed to just now, when we limit, we're constricting our body and we're constricting our soul. And if there's one thing our soul doesn't want, is to be constricted. Because our soul is free. Wow. Paula, this has been wonderful. I think I had an insight because of you.
Not because of me, mate.
Not because of me, mate.
But it's honestly beautiful conversation. Like I said at the beginning, I am just bowled over at the minute by the amount of aligned flood of alignment that it's like if it was a wave, I'd be knocked over. And I love it, and thank you for being part of it. And thank you, Emma, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Paula,
Yes, darling.
I feel love. I feel love for you.
Right back at you.
So, I think this is a good place to wrap this up. So I can get my phone and go and listen to Katie and walk for 15 minutes.
Do you know what? I'm going to listen to Katie as well. There's something very attractive about that to me.
And tomorrow I'll talk to you about during the match. Maybe we'll get potty mouth again.
Are you watching it, Emma?
What's that, footy?
Yeah.
No, I don't
even like it. I don't even like it, but I end up getting. And my partner goes out to the pub. Well, I can't go to the pub because I might put a jinx on him. So